welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to chamfer and bevel edges. Chamfering and beveling edges is something that we can do in other kind of 3D programs, and it's a pretty fundamental thing that we need to know how to do in order to get like really specific kind of shapes. So in other programs, it's already built into like the shapes, and you can set the edges to chamfer or set the edges to bevel. But in Dreams, it's kind of different because you have to kind of manually do it yourself. The closest thing we have to a beveled kind of cube is the rounded cube, but in my opinion, the edges are too curved. And if you want things to be less curved, that would be manual kind of bevel that you gotta do. So let's learn how to do the bevel. So in my previous video, I talked about navigation with precision. We're going to apply most of what we learned from that. So here the kind of view is kind of all over the place. So I can go to the corner, go default, so that I can go back to the center of the scene. And the cube is kind of not aligned with the kind of floor guide, so I can hold onto it with R2, press triangle to realign it. I'm going to rotate the camera with the grab, so R1 to grab. And I am going to, under guides, use precise move to kind of bring it to the center of this floor guide. Now to get the bevel, what we can do is use a cylinder, but not just any kind of cylinder. We are going to go L1 square to enter the shape editor, create a section so that it's 4, so it's a quarter of the cylinder, and we're going to make a hole in the cylinder like this. And to bevel the edge, I'm going to keep things at right angles and then press triangle to subtract. We can just place it in the cube like this for now, so that we can see where the shape is. And what we're going to do is adjust it so that it cuts out the edge. So to make it so that it's aligned with the edge, you just hold the subtracted shape with R2, press triangle to realign it, and then kind of drag it out so that we get a seam that blends with the edge like that. And then we'll move it up like this so that we don't see that kind of seam. And now it's kind of too short, so what we can do is use the stretch tool. So stretch, and then readjust the kind of cylinder so that it kind of bevels out the edge like that. We can go smaller than this by scaling the cylinder down like this, and then moving it to the edge a bit more. So now we have something smaller, and we can use the stretch tool again. And to do it for all of the edges, we just duplicate the subtracted object, rotate it 90 degrees, and just let go like this. Hold it again, and then press triangle to realign it. so that it locks onto like a right angle, and then just move with the precise tool to the edge like this. And we'll do that with every edge. So duplicate, rotate 90 degrees. It doesn't have to be 90 degrees exact. You can have it like 75 degrees, but then when you press triangle, it will snap to 90 degrees. And then just let go and then readjust. It's a good exercise to do because most shapes, they will have like bevels in it with varying sizes. So you can have a very large bevel on one side like this, while like the other kind of edges are smaller kind of bevels, and it just gives you more control over like the edges and stuff. So now I can scale it up and control the angle of the bevel, and you can manually adjust the edges by scaling it up or down and then readjusting it so that there's no seam to it. Chamfering is the same kind of thing, so it's just a wedge, and the wedge, if you hold it and press triangle and rotate it, this is how you chamfer stuff. And chamfering is just, it's similar to beveling, but it's actually cutting at a 45-degree angle, and the wedge is like a perfect shape for this kind of thing. But the main thing is, like, if you want it to be exact, you just hold the subtracted shape and then press triangle to kind of realign things to right angles. And you can get like, you can adjust the chamfer or the bevel of like the edges, and this gives you a lot more control over like the kind of shape that you want to sculpt. These techniques I've used for Chappie and also for Wally. So because they're robots and they require a lot more precision kind of modeling to it, whereas like people, they have muscle and skin, so it's like another kind of technique to model people. But for robots and shapes that are kind of mechanical or kind of engineered or something like that, that's like my tip on trying to get more precise with stuff. Once you've mastered that kind of stuff, you can achieve pretty much any shape that you can think of, and you can get very specific with how you cut into objects and stuff. Like here, I'm using the chamfer to get the kind of corner cut off. I'm using the bevel for like the edge here. And most mechanical kind of shapes, like his eyes even, I'm using a bevel kind of technique to get this kind of shape. So there's a bevel here that's larger than this kind of bevel, which is small. And it's not just like cubes that you can bevel and chamfer, it's also like round objects and like cylinders that you can bevel and stuff as well. So with cylinders, how do you do a bevel on this? So the way I bevel or chamfer the edge here, I'm just gonna make sure like it's in the middle. Press triangle to kind of align everything. And then to create a chamfer, let's start with that. I'll use a cone like this and then scale up the cone until like, so I'll use precise move again and kind of align it and scale it down and scale it up until the base of the cone is the same diameter with like the cylinder, and this can take quite a while to kind of get right or get it as close as you can. So then now if you want a kind of chamfered edge on the cylinder, all you got to do is crop out the top of the cone. Like I use a cube to kind of crop into it, and now I can adjust like the chamfer of like a cylinder. So if I move the cone over a little bit, now I can adjust the chamfer of a cylinder. And if I want the kind of angle here to be more steep or slanted, I can use the stretch tool. So I might move this kind of crop to the side like this so that I have room to scale the cone. So I can make the cone more flat. And then I can move the crop back to position. And now I'll get like a flatter kind of chamfer. Another way to bevel it, I guess, is using a filled donut and then scaling the filled donut until like you can get rid of that seam. Sometimes I'll spend a really long time just to try and get rid of the seam. Like I've done that before, like heaps of times. Then here you can adjust like the scale of the kind of donut. So that you get like the curved edge on a cylinder. So that's how I would bevel like a cylinder. Those are some of my techniques on how to bevel and chamfer objects in Dreams, and these two things are pretty fundamental things that you'd learn in other programs like AutoCAD and stuff like that, because AutoCAD, it has an option where you type in how much you want to bevel and how much you want to chamfer and the angle of the chamfer and the angle of the bevel. But in Dreams, you kind of have to manually try and do that because it's not actually built into the object. So that's how you do it in Dreams. And if you can master like these kind of techniques, you can create any shape you want to create. Let's turn on studio lighting. Like Chappie is made up of a bazillion pieces, but it is still using like the bevel and chamfer kind of techniques that I was going through. If you can bevel and chamfer, Like, that's a pretty good thing to try and practice. But then there's other stuff like extrusion and how do you taper and extrude stuff and subtract stuff, those other things in 3D modeling. So in the next video, I might get into like how to taper stuff and how to extrude and like do other things like detail on like a sculpt or something like that. But beveling and chamfering are pretty fundamental, so I thought I'd share like the techniques for that in this video. So hope that helps for people who are interested in like 3D sculpting and 3D modeling using dreams. And yeah, I'll see you in the. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.